right, I'm excited for today's episode. Today I have Alan Draper, a serial entrepreneur who, Alan, tell me about all of the not maybe all of them, but you've got a lot of companies you started, and they aren't like, oh yeah, just we've done a couple marketing agencies, like they're all over the place. Tell us about the different companies you founded.
Yeah, so I started my first business in the pest control space, so home services, uh, about 10 years ago. Since then, founded a digital marketing agency, a law firm, product company that pitched on Shark Tank. I'm an angel investor, just quite a few different industries and wear a few different hats for those businesses. But deep down, man, I'm just an entrepreneur. I'm a visionary, so I love starting companies and putting deals together, and that's my specialty.
Let's start with that. When you say visionary, are you referring to the EOS archetype of the visionary versus an integrator?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm not super familiar with EOS. I am a little bit, but yeah, it's I have an online course for people building pest control companies. And I would just got off the phone with one of my partners, and he's the integrator, he's like the operating partner. And so I help a lot of times with the idea and strategy, the growth model. I'll look at financials and make sure we're on track. But I like to say that I have business partners that are like the proverbial parents of the company, and I'm the uncle that swings by from time to time.
Nice, nice. No, I love that partnership. And is that typically the setup for all of the different types of businesses?
Yeah, so that's my model now. In the beginning, so my first company, the pest control company, like I was very hands-on. I was the company's first technician, customer service rep, vendor relationships manager, HR, sales rep, all that stuff. So I was wearing all those hats. So for the first few years, I was very involved. And a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand that because it's our personality, right? We're like, oh, that's a good business idea. That's a good business idea. I want to do this and I want to do that. And I have a lot of young entrepreneurs that come to me and they're like, hey, Alan, I want to do what you do. But the problem is they need to go back about a decade and see what I was doing then, because it's so hard to start a business and especially grow one from the ground up. And that business is very tender. It's a blade of grass that's just beginning to sprout. And if you miss one thing, it's different than a lawn where it's like, hey, this is a mature lawn. If I miss a day of watering, I'm going to be fine. That company, man, that needs it requires this full contact, hands on, all hands on deck approach, especially in those early years. And that's hard for a lot of entrepreneurs. A lot of entrepreneurs, especially the visionaries, are like, okay, like I cast the vision, like we're implementing it. Now I'm bored. I want to go on to the next thing. And you really need that time. And it takes 3 to 4 years probably before you can move on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Started in the marketing world as a freelancer with an LLC, and I couldn't hire anybody until you had so much work that you needed someone to support it. And just looking at stumbling through that lens and being able to grow, it's easy to get stuck in that too, right? You get stuck in the weeds a little bit too long because that's what you've had to do to survive. So the flip side of that is that feeling when you're like, okay, wait a minute. Wait, now I can have somebody running all of the things in the day to day so that I can look more big picture. So I can look at what the next focus for the company is, another company to add to the portfolio, but it's totally earned. And I think that's something that everybody needs to hear. So when you're looking at a business idea, what are you evaluating and how do you go from, that's a good idea to let's do it?
I think it depends on what my role is going to be with the business. So because I invest in startup, I'm looking at the founders. I'm looking at the team generally, the founding team, but especially the founders. And I'm trying to figure out if the founding team, if they're the types of people that won't give up, right? A lot of times people get hung up on an idea, and I used to in the past. And the ideas, yeah, that's cool, but there's millions of ideas, man. Ideas aren't worth much anymore. It's the execution. If I'm advising a group, that's going to be part of it. Okay, what's the founding team? I'm not a big business plan guy. I think a lot of it's just like boilerplate, doesn't add much value. But I do want to know what the marketing plan is. I want to know what the go to market strategy is. And I want to know how cash flow is going to be managed. You get those three things right, it's tough to fail. If, if you get them actually right, you have founders that are like bought in, that are like, hey, like I quit my day job. This is it, man. Like I don't have another option. So if I'm the founder and I'm looking for an operational partner, I think I will use some of that same strategy. But a big part of it for me is, how will this business idea, how will it add to my existing businesses? So a lot of my integration has been vertically. So I have a business that's going to be a decent sized customer for this business. So we're going to overcome some of those early hurdles. So it makes it a little easier to break into a specific industry. That's why it looks like I'm all over the place. But my companies use my law firm, and my companies use my digital marketing agency. And so that makes it a little easier, although it's not as easy as I thought it was when I first started implementing that strategy.
Yeah, and that makes sense. That's a really cool structure. I know I have a friend, they're a couple, and one of them's the CEO of one company, and the other one, she's a lawyer. And yeah, as that company grows, so is that client. So I've seen that a lot. How does the digital marketing agency work? Are most of the companies you're building direct to consumer, or some of them B2B? And then how does that change how you structure your marketing arm?
Our digital marketing agency, it's called Lizard SEM, based in Charlotte. We created, like going back to what I was just saying, we created a business to solve a problem. And the problem that my pest control company was having years ago was finding the marketing help that we could trust. And digital marketing, it's crazy hard. And sometimes it's not really clear what's being produced. And so we tried different solutions over a course of about 6 years. And we decided, hey, let's try to do our own thing. My pest control company will be the first customer, first partner of the digital marketing agency. And then what we'll do is we'll use that company as the poster child, because I have a successful pest control company located in 7 states. We have 10 locations from Long Island, New York to Reno, Nevada. That helped with the marketing within the pest control industry. So the digital marketing agency, you asked, like, for direct to consumer, that's B2B. So we do work specifically within the pest control niche, and we've branched out a little bit to some other areas. But one problem that early companies make is, and I think it's a problem of the entrepreneur and the visionary specifically, with big goals, where they're like, I want to take over the world. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, except for when you're getting started and somebody asks you what you do and who you help, and you say, we help everybody, who you're actually helping is nobody. And it's really tough to get credibility when you do everything for everybody. So with Lizard, our digital marketing agency, we said, hey, we're just going to work with pest control businesses that are looking for lead gen. And so we did a lot of pay-per-click, started doing some SEO, moved into website development. Now we're doing social media marketing. And so we started really niche and became experts in that specific thing, and relied a lot on that relationship with my pest control company to say, hey, look, this pest control company, Proof Pest Control, is using us. They're a very successful company in a bunch of different states. We do great work for them. We can do great work for you. It's really plugging in these companies to assist and solve problems within other companies that I have.
I think what's really cool about that niche within pest control is that, unlike some industries where the companies in that industry are all competing against one another, if you're in pest control, you're only going to cover a certain amount of ground, right?
Yeah.
So you can help tons of different companies that all do the same thing, but serve different markets. It's very scalable in that regard. I want to go back to your operating partners, because you talked about finding the right operating partner and being able to grow with them. But in a lot of ways, once you start signing some of that paperwork, this is a professional marriage of sorts. So how do you make sure that you find the person that you really want to invest in a company with and really grow as business partners?
It's hard, man, and you're exactly right. It is a professional marriage. It is this relationship where you have to support each other and you have to work through things, but finding those partners, just for the record, I have a lot of partnerships that have failed.
Sure.
What I'm about to say, like, you have to know that this is a work in progress for me. That I don't know that there's this recipe because personalities and goals and expectations are so different. But one thing that I've learned is similar to an angel investing type relationship. I'm looking for a partner that if I can determine that they're going to have the worst day of their life and then wake up the next day, put on their work boots and just go back to work, that's my person. It's hard assessing that. But if you have somebody, a lot of people will say, what's their background? How good are they at sales? What's their experience? What type of money are they bringing to the company? All important things, all of a distant second to, is this person going to quit or not? And I think part of it's just because my personality, I'm very tenacious. I hold on too long. I hold on and I continue to try to build companies when the ship has sailed and I need to cut my losses. So my match is somebody with a similar perspective. And so the partnerships that have worked for me are those types of individuals. The people that are like, all right, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I don't have all the answers. Our product's going to change. Our marketing strategy is going to change. Our approach is going to change. Pretty much everything that we think our business is going to be different in 5, 10 years. So what's going to stay the same and what's going to be the controlling factor? It's that partnership that's, hey, we'll figure it out. We pivot. We build a company based off of core values, trying to solve a central problem, and we pivot around that so that my companies now look way different than they did 10 years ago. Thank goodness, because if they didn't, they wouldn't exist, especially post COVID. So I think it's trying to find, it's such a great question and it's a difficult one to answer because there's no silver bullet. It's finding that person that, just like in a marriage, stuff's going to go wrong. It's one day you're going to come out of the honeymoon phase and you're going to have money problems and you're going to have a disagreement with the in-laws and you're going to have a kid that misbehaves and gets in trouble in school. And so what is that marriage built on? Hey, whatever we do, we're not giving up on each other. That's the type of partner I'm looking for.
That's awesome. And one of the things that I think you're really speaking to is adaptability. And I feel
Yeah.
like adaptability, if you're one of those people who are like, wait a minute, I don't have all the answers. Life will always change. The world's going to go in a direction and I've got to make sure that I'm moving with it. It's really strange when you come to people who don't look at things like that. And you're like, that tension that obviously exists when you don't have people like that. Uh, Oh, eh, I can easily see how that would happen. I've been in those situations where you're like, okay, so then we just got to do it. And then people, what do you mean we got to change course?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I always say that the best reason to not continuing to do something is because it's always been done that way.
100%.
But people struggle with that, especially in certain industries. In pest control is a blue collar industry. Now I own a law firm and there's still a hint of this, but the like old school way of thinking, just this is the way it's always been done. I have a great story about this. I can't remember who I heard it from. And it's probably analogous. I don't know that it's an actual factual story, but I could see it being true. And that is the story of this newly married couple. It's their first Thanksgiving. He's a naive husband, right? I think we all are. I've been married almost 17 years now, still learning, always will be. Walks into the kitchen, sees his wife chop the Thanksgiving ham in half and put it in the pan, put it in the oven. And he's naively asks his wife, why did you just do that? And she's, oh, because that's the way it's done. He says, what do you mean that's the way it's done? No, that's the way my mom taught me how to do it. Like with the ham, you chop it in half, you put it in the pan, put it in the oven. But he didn't give up on this. So mom comes over for Thanksgiving dinner and he couldn't let it go. He's, wait, why do you chop it in half? And then And mom agreed with daughter, obviously. And it's just the best way to do it. That's the way it's always been done. And where did you learn how to do that, mother-in-law? I learned that from my mother. Couple weeks pass, the husband, newly wedded husband, runs into grandma at a family event, and he couldn't get it off of his mind. He's like, "Why do you cut the ham in half? I need this answer." And so he asks her, he's like, "Why do you cut the ham in half?" And she's, "Oh, I used to cut it in half because my oven was so small that it didn't fit in it." And he's, "Wait, so this entire time we've done something not out of because it was the right way, but because of necessity. And we've continued to do it like that at the detriment of efficiency, right? It's easier to cook the whole thing at once. And businesses are like that, where you have to question. And a lot of this comes back to having transparency in the company and getting feedback from the people that are the boots on the ground, right? We need to ask questions. Netflix is great at this. They have a great culture of company feedback. So, like, that goes back to what you were talking about, that flexibility, being able to adjust and pivot and not just do something because that's the way it's always been done.
Wow, what a story. And digital marketing myself, we are constantly running into clients from legacy industries that may have a little bit of a harder time adapting. And I do believe that that is a wonderful story that I'm going to steal time and time again to illustrate just how foolish some things are that we see. What advice would you give to a entrepreneur who's starting to, they put in a little bit of the time, but they haven't got the traction just yet? What would you say? What's going to get you over the hump to get to that point where you can start making bigger moves and start recognizing seeing your dreams come a little bit more to fruition?
It's going to sound kind of cheesy, but we need to take the lid off a little bit. I play basketball, and there's days where I can't make a basket to save my life. And so what I'll try to do is take a closer shot mentally and actually see the basketball go through the hoop. And it's like that in business sometimes, where we have these self-imposed limitations, and a lot of times we don't know it. And so we bring paradigms into business when we started, just like the young wife brought the paradigm of how to cook a ham. And so we have to figure that out. Now, there's so much to do beyond that. I'm not the type of person that just thinks you sit around and dream about your goals and they magically knock on your door. There's so many different ways that this question could go. What's the issue? What are we running into? I would say this just came to mind. I solve problems with people, not answers. I read a book called Who, Not How. And that's basically the essence of it. A lot of startups don't have money to just hire as many people as they would like to. So that's not always an option. But if that is an option, bringing in kind of a different perspective, somebody that has skills and experience that you don't have, is huge. One of the ways that I was able to grow my companies is, I wouldn't say I'm a humble person in a lot of ways, but I've never really attached my self-worth to my ability to be the biggest fish in the pond. So I'll hire people that are better than me, and I'll manage them and I'll lead them even though they are better than me. And I wear that as a badge of honor, where a lot of entrepreneurs, they do the opposite. They purposefully, whether it's consciously and they're aware of it or not, but they'll purposefully hire somebody that they're better than, that they know more than. And that's something that's really important to them. But I do the opposite. And then I brag about the people that I hire. A lot of people will hire somebody that's not as good as them and brag about how good they are at their job. Part of it has to do with letting go of some of this control. But when you hire somebody that's better than you, it's crazy. I'm actually making an offer today for a new CFO for one of my companies. I interviewed him on Friday evening at 6. Blew me away. And I'm not a super formal guy. I wore a suit and tie in court for years. And so I show up in a t-shirt and shorts, and this guy, top level CFO, CPA, MBA, worked for billion-dollar companies in the past. It only took me a few minutes to realize that guy is going to be way better at what I need him to do than I could ever be. And so that's the approach. What are the resources that I can employ to solve this problem, to take the lid off, to see like whatever it is, if it's marketing or if it's personnel or if it's customer management, what is the problem that is holding my company back? But if you can, it's who, not how.
I love that. And one of the books that I read a while ago that I really like is called The Captain's Class. It takes a look at all the most successful sports teams throughout history and finds this thread of a star player who totally buys into what the coach is doing. And that connection is just threaded in all the great sports dynasties in a way that relates obviously down to business. Is like you have an owner who serves as a coach, but if you don't have that top player who buys in, then it's hard to get everybody else along. So if you're hiring superstars and they buy into what you're doing and you're elevating them and they're elevating you, that gets the whole organization rowing in the same direction and on board. I love that.
You know what's funny that you mentioned that? So the CFO that's like on the top of my mind right now, because we're in the middle of making an offer. The CEO came to me because I was having a hard time getting over some specific fee that was associated with his salary. CEO comes to me and he's like, I tell you what, I want this guy so bad, I'll split it with you. I will pay it out of my own pocket, half of this fee that's associated with this guy. And I was like, how do I not hire him now? And of course, I'm not going to take money from my CEO, but there was so much buy-in, like you were just saying. It's, dude, if he's that bought into this company and to this individual that's going to help us, how can I, who knows a lot less than the CEO, how could I say no to him? And it was immediate as soon as he said, and he might have known that would put me over the top, but it's, you see that buy-in, I'll lay down on hot coals for that guy. And the reason why is because he'll do the same for me. A lot of us as owners and business leaders and entrepreneurs, we're like, how do we get loyalty? How do we get people to stay after work and you give loyalty first. You stand up for your people when it's hard for you to do. You give them raises without question when it's deserved. You listen to them when they're saying something that you don't like, and then they'll do all those things for you.
Yeah, I could not agree more. All right, last question, because I'm always interested in this. Every entrepreneur is different. I've asked some people this question and they tell me they like to work 80-hour weeks, and that is just who they are. But how do you balance work and life?
Yeah, so I embrace a principle called the focused imbalance. Author Rory Vaden came up with that idea in his book, Procrastinate on Purpose. And the idea is that when I'm doing something, I'm not striking a balance on a micro scale. So I don't look at my days to determine balance. I look at my years. Now, I have young children and I do need to spend time with them each day. So that's a really important part. But when I'm on vacation, I'm on vacation. I'm not working. Dude, we're right in the middle of the greatest era of distraction that has ever existed. There's all sorts of things vying for our time. And what's happening is our efficiency and our production is suffering. I heard somebody say a couple of weeks ago that the greatest skill of the 21st century is going to be the ability to pay attention to one thing at a time. So I don't work. So I own over 28 companies. I have 20 plus business partners. I'm an angel investor. I'm an attorney. I'm writing a book. I have a podcast. I have a personal brand. I'm active on social media. I do podcasts like this. And people are like, Alan, how do you do it? First of all, I don't, right? I have a lot of people in place. Remember, who, not how. But I also, when I'm doing something, like right now, this conversation, dude, I could have a fire quite literally in one of my offices and it doesn't matter. And it's really hard to say that. But the way that I find balance is by the opposite of balance, and that's focus. And it's a work in progress, man. I don't always succeed. And it's really hard for beginning entrepreneurs because you're just trying to keep the lights on. I have some days early in my entrepreneur career where I'm not proud of. I had a 4-month-old little boy that there were days that I didn't see him because he would wake up after I left and go to bed before I got home. And I lean on those moments to not make those sacrifices now. But that's the big picture, is staying focused. I do have an executive assistant She helps with, I don't know how I do without her. Shout out to Tori. And I stick to my calendar. If I'm going to play video games with my son for 30 minutes, it's going on my calendar so that I can block that off, and I respect that time.
No, that's awesome. And I think it's just, you speak to so many different parts of that entrepreneur journey, constantly learning, being okay making mistakes, even those that you go back and you regret, but ultimately you're doing it in the name of making change for a better tomorrow, whether it's for yourself or for your companies. I think that's awesome. Alan, thank you so much for being here. I love this. This was great. And I think the audience is going to really learn a lot, if not more, and if not nothing more than an amazing ham story.
Awesome. Yeah, my pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, bud. That's it for today. If you like what you see, give us a thumbs up and make sure you hit subscribe so you can see our latest videos as soon as they drop. We really appreciate you watching. See you next time.